Hello and welcome to the Musty Creative Podcast. I'm your host, Jesús Noland, and I'm joined by my friend and yours,
Michelle Noland.
Wow, 2 episodes in a row.
Yes.
You say your full name, no gimmicks.
Yes.
There's something going wrong.
I didn't meow like a cat this
Not
time.
the true Michelle. Anyways, thank you for joining us today, even though it's musty in here, because we've been working too hard. If this is your first time listening to us, we are the Musty Collective, and we motivate ourselves to become better storytellers. And today, we have another special guest. That's right, 2 interviews in a row. He has worked as a story analyst for big names like Matthew Fox from the show Lost, and Cameron Crowe, who was the writer/director of films like Jerry Maguire and Almost Famous. Ruben Padilla.
Hi, thank you. And I love that we have a live audience here today. This is fantastic.
Yes. Live audience.
Woo! Untie me.
Yeah, we're in the studio today. Actually, we're in the embassy back lot in the soundstage, number 13. And this is great. Thank you so much, Ruben, for
My
giving us
pleasure.
this great venue to podcast and interview.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Yes. All right, well, let's start the show. All right, welcome to the show, Ruben. You are officially a Musty Creative.
Welcome.
Officially?
Yes.
I passed?
Yes.
I made it?
Yeah.
Wow. What does
Yeah,
that
great.
mean?
Well, we're going to give you a degree. We'll mail it to you.
I see.
Yeah, and you can show your
I've been
friends.
called musty before, but never creative.
Yeah. Well, because you're working too hard,
Right.
not taking a shower. Right? But
I
again,
took one just before I came here. I'll have you know.
we'll see. After the end of this interview, we'll see. But yeah, it's just for people that love story, are actually storytellers, and also show grit, and
That's me.
don't give up.
That's me.
Yeah. You have an intriguing job. I said it in the intro, but it's Story Analyst.
I used to have that interesting job.
Okay.
I don't have that now, but
Okay.
that was kind of my introduction into Hollywood. That's how I ended up moving there.
Wow.
Actually, I grew up in San Diego.
Yeah.
And I actually lived in San Diego while I worked for Cameron Crowe in Los Angeles. It was really great because he
Yeah.
needed somebody. I actually was hired on as an assistant first.
Okay.
And the guy who recommended me was the outgoing assistant. And he said to me, listen, directors don't like it, especially if they're a writer.
Yeah.
They don't like to hire people who want to be writers. So don't say that you're into writing.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what am I going to, I don't want to lie to him. What
Yeah.
did he ask me?
Right.
He's too busy. He's not going to ask you anything.
Yeah.
I said, okay. So just be the assistant, but don't say that you want to write.
Yeah.
Which I did. And so I went up, and sure enough, I was just a personal assistant. That's all I was. I mean,
Yeah.
picking up the mail and running errands and
Yeah.
dry cleaning. But in the first few days, sure enough, he decides to strike up a conversation with me, and he
Oh,
says,
no.
"So, what do you like to do?
Yeah.
Tell me about you."
Yeah.
And I just couldn't lie to him, and I said, "Well, I want to write."
Oh, no.
And I could kind of see the look on his face, but he actually didn't mind.
Yeah.
And he says, "So, you want to be a story analyst?" I said, "Absolutely."
What's a story analyst?
Well, a story analyst actually is kind of the gatekeeper of all of the material that crosses the desk of an actor or a director or somebody important in Hollywood. They just don't have time
Yeah.
to do all the reading of all the submissions that they're given. So they hire somebody or somebody's provided to them to read scripts.
Yeah.
And then you read a script, and then you kind of write a synopsis,
Right.
what's important about it. You do it basically a book report.
Yeah.
And then you generally, 3 categories, you say, consider this,
Yes.
or pass on this is no good, or recommend this.
Right.
You should read this after me.
So if I had a script for Back to the Future 4
Right.
for Steven Spielberg,
Yes.
it would go to you first.
If I was Steven Spielberg story analyst,
Yeah.
I would read it.
Okay.
And then I would say, you don't want to read that, Steven. or
you
should
do
consider
wanna-
it. You
do
may
wanna
want to read it because
yeah.
there has some good things. You may want to consider the writer. You may
Yeah.
want to consider this aspect of the story was really great. I like this take on it. Or you have to read this, Stephen. This is really, really good.
Okay. Let's focus on the really, really good for a second.
Right.
Like, how many of those films, like, or those screenplays or stories or pitches, could you say in an estimation, like, good 24%, bad 70%?
Good question. I'd always heard that most of the scripts in Hollywood are bad.
Yeah.
That they're really just not good. In fact, that was a thing that teachers and mentors would encourage me, saying, you have no idea how bad a lot of that stuff is. So if you want to write, do it. Because if you think about it, to write a screenplay is a big accomplishment.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just to do that work already kind of separates you from all of the people in the world who want to write a screenplay.
Right.
If you've actually done it, then you're in a smaller pool of people.
Yeah.
And then to actually do the footwork to get that script submitted is an even smaller pool of people.
Right.
And then to have those scripts that are submitted actually be good is an even smaller pool of people.
Yeah.
So you'd be surprised how many scripts actually get into the hands of important people and they're actually good. So I found this to be encouraging.
Yeah.
I thought, this is great. This is wonderful. So I was in an interesting position, though, because at the time, Cameron Crowe was an A-list director. I mean, he had done Jerry Maguire.
Right.
And Tom Cruise had an Oscar nomination, and it was nominated for 5 Academy Awards.
Wow.
So it put him at a level.
Yeah.
This was in 1995. He did Jerry Maguire.
Right.
I joined him in 2000, and he had just finished Almost Famous, which if you haven't seen it's in my top 10, regardless of the fact that I worked for the man. It's a wonderful movie.
Right.
And so he was accepting submissions to do other people's work. And so because of his association with Tom Cruise and the fact that he was, and still is, I think, a wonderful writer, he was getting submissions from really big names. So I was in a fortunate position that most of the stuff I saw was of a very high quality.
And you could just read it and learn
Yeah,
from it.
I knew that this is a Brad Pitt project or a Julia Roberts project or a Danny DeVito project.
Danny DeVito submitted a
Danny
script?
DeVito, Danny DeVito, Tom Hanks, Kevin Spacey before he got in trouble. I mean, they were all big names.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of the submissions also were not for scripts; they were for books. Because if you recall, Cameron Crowe worked for Rolling Stone for many years, and he's a writer. I mean, he's a journalist and a writer and a music, expert. So there would be a lot of books on, music biographies and musicians. And so in addition to the scripts, they'd give me books to read for a possible blurb on the back of the jacket, or something.
Right.
So when I said I wanted to be a writer, he said, well, let me give you a couple of scripts and we'll try you out.
Wow.
And he went into his office and he grabbed a couple of scripts, which, looking back on it, it might have been a little bit unfair because he picked 2 scripts that dealt with subjects that he was very familiar with.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, these were things that, he knew a lot about the scripts or the subject matter, and I had never really known what, I wasn't familiar with these stories.
How old were you at this time?
Well, it was
if I may ask.
2000. I was 33.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I took these 2 scripts and I said, this is it. This is a test. And it was like a college final. I stayed up all night. I went to Barnes & Noble back when Barnes & Nobles were open till 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And I got a couple books on the subjects and I went back. Oh, that's the other thing I wanted to say. I lived in San Diego.
Yeah.
I got the job and he said, listen, I live in the Palisades, but I have a condominium in Santa Monica. It's not being used, so why don't you come up and you can stay there for 3 days a week. So I got to stay in his condominium where he wrote Say Anything.
Yeah.
And it was like my little private apartment for 3 days a week for 2 years. It was
awesome.
That's
wonderful.
a really good
It was
opportunity.
fantastic. So I went home, or I went to the condo and I
It was already home to you.
I was home. And
moving
I kicked off my shoes, took off my clothes, and I read these scripts and I did my little reports. And it was like the first time I'd ever really done this.
Yeah.
But I kind of just followed my instincts. And I will not toot my own horn to say that I was a good story analyst. In fact, I could have been a bad story analyst. I just happened to have gotten it right with these two stories.
Right.
And my opinions just happen to have coincided,
With
I
Cameron
guess, with
Crowe.
his opinions.
Right.
And I might have been completely opposite had I been working for somebody else.
Right.
But it just so happened that he read the reports and said, you're the best story analyst I've ever had. You're it. You're the guy. So I became from an assistant to a story analyst overnight, which basically just meant I still had to do other errands, but I got to go into the office every day.
Yeah.
And I got to be right next door to where his office was in the little library room, and I worked all day just reading stuff. So that was really great.
That's an awesome opportunity. Can you tell us how much with writing, especially in film, TV, entertainment, is subjective art versus there are objective ways to say this is good, this is bad? As a big nerd of pop culture, I go back and argue with people on the internet. This movie's bad because of this, and the writing's bad here, and the plot development. But is it really just subjective, or like you said, you could have been a bad story analyst for someone else,
right,
but you were great for Cameron Crowe?
Yeah, just by coincidence, it worked. But this is an interesting subject you bring up because I have had arguments with people who have said that a movie is bad, making the subjective argument. And I have said, no, it wasn't a bad movie. It's a very good movie. You just happen to have not liked a good movie, which is okay. I remember my dearest friend, do you ever see Memento? Christopher Nolan's Memento? A wonderful film. I mean, it's you can't even really argue it. I mean, the guy took the rules of filmmaking, kind of switched it up, kind of changed it, and he made a very good film. But I can understand people saying they didn't like it. It's confusing. It messes with the linear time. I can understand people saying I didn't like it, but I could not accept somebody saying it was a horrible film.
Right.
So I remember standing on a sidewalk arguing for an hour with somebody. Saying, no, it was a good film that you didn't like. And to this day, they say it was a horrible movie. But I think I agree with you. There are some films, some performances, some stories that are dramatically sound. They follow the tenets of dramatic structure. They hit all the notes. They do what they're supposed to do. And maybe you don't like it for whatever reason. Maybe you have
some kind of
a
feeling,
visceral reaction that goes against maybe what the director was trying to do. And I respect people's opinions, but there are some movies that you just can't. I mean, nobody can say The Godfather is a bad movie, right?
No, they can't. No, they can't.
I mean, I don't think I could respect somebody who said it was a bad movie.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, you're about to meet someone. No. Behind door number 2. From your past. The guy who you argue with on the street.
So, what is the difference between story and narrative?
Oh, well, this is a big can of worms you're opening up because it's a distinction that I made up. So there is no. This is just me talking. But I think it's okay to do because Seth Godin, who's a wonderful author, and he has written about many subjects, but he kind of created this idea that narrative, for him at least, and his readers, and he's a best-selling author. He defines narrative as the stories that we tell ourselves in our head. So the little, whether they're positive or negative, the little loops, the voice that's going on in your head that might be the reason that you are successful or not successful or are afraid of something or not, those he calls narratives. And that's perfectly fine. It just so happens that it's an arbitrary definition that he just kind of came up with. If you look in the dictionary, narrative is a synonym of story. There is no real distinction between the two. But I had this nagging feeling as a writer and as a story analyst and as a performer and entertainer, as a public speaker. I've always had this nagging feeling that there was something more than just story. Because story encompasses so many things. But the one thing that I found was missing was that story could be somebody else's story that you tell. And a story could be made up and not real. And I wanted something that fit the category of a story that only you could tell.
Oh, wow.
A story that could only be told by you, and a story that would reveal more of who you were as a person because you told it. So I started playing with this idea that stories are great and stories are tools, but a narrative is something bigger and more personal because I did a lot of storytelling.
Yeah.
I'm a member of the Story Salon in Los Angeles, which is Los Angeles's longest running storytelling venue.
Oh, wow.
A lot of people know of The Moth and other
The
things.
Moth, yeah.
This precedes The Moth.
Oh, really?
Story Salon has been around, and it's a group of people who get together on Wednesday nights in Studio City, and they tell first-person narratives.
Okay.
And they share who they are. And when it's done well, you realize only that person can tell that story.
Right.
And so I've noticed as I walk through life that, there's sometimes, too often, people will tell a story that has been fed to them by the company or that they've been reciting forever and they've been, adapting it, but it's not really telling us who this person is.
Right.
And I got the opportunity as I went through life, and we're jumping around chronologically, but later I took a lot of these strategies that I knew could be useful to people who want to tell what they consider to be a story, but are actually doing something more grand, in my opinion, and that is sharing their narrative, whether it's in a speech or they're writing something or they're telling a story. For example, if you take a look at a Steven Spielberg movie, you know that there are ways that only Steven Spielberg would express that film or that scene. And so if you take a look at his body of work, Steven Spielberg has created a narrative that actually tells you a lot more about him as an artist and as a person, perhaps as a father, perhaps as a husband, as a Jewish a person of Jewish faith. I mean, he has revealed who he is with his narrative in his body of work. At the same time, somebody could get up and give an acceptance speech at the Oscars, and it will reveal nothing of who they are. It's something that somebody wrote for them, and they just are rattling off names.
So that would be a story.
That would be just not even a story. It would just be you're informing as you're just talking.
Okay.
But yet somebody can get up there, and you can look back on Tom Hanks' acceptance speeches. You can look back on Cuba Gooding Jr.'s acceptance speech, where there's just such unbridled passion and humanity coming through. Not a political message so much, but you get a chance to say, I know that person more
He
now
showed
because
himself.
of that, and only he could have done it that way. So I created this movement. It just started getting traction. That narrative is a story that only you can tell, and there are narratives that may not even include a story. And that's kind of, some advanced level thinking there. But it's possible for you to reveal to me, and maybe during our time together today, you will share with me, I will share with you who I am as a person, maybe without injecting any stories. I've already told stories, so I broke that rule. But it's possible to do that and share who you are in a way that that is unique and narrative, as I define it. So I created this company called Narrative Strategies that helps people in speaker training and also story creation and in sales presentations, because I took these strategies from Hollywood and I entered the corporate world. And what I found in the corporate world, especially the sales corporate world, which is a brutal, really high pressure, it's an incredibly different planet. I mean, as somebody in Hollywood, a creative person going into the corporate world, especially sales, it was like another planet for me.
Definitely.
And one of the things I noticed is that people would tell these stories that were not true, and they were purporting to be true. They were lying. And I thought, well, if there's no difference between narrative and story, then how can you say there's a difference between story and lying? So I thought, there's got to be something more here. And I started realizing that you could take some of these strategies, put them in an authentic way in a sales process in the corporate world. I mean, some of these salespeople were trading stories back and forth like baseball cards. There was literally, I remember somebody came up to me and thanked me for a big sale that they got. And I said, well, how did I help you? He says, I used your story about your son. I said, what do you mean? He goes, that story you told about your son and the chocolate milk? I said, yeah. He says, I used it and it was great and I got the sale. I said, but you don't even have a son. He goes, I know. I go, but it's my story. He goes, oh, it was fine. And he had absolutely no qualm about it. He thought it was actually a great thing. And as far as I know, he might even still be using that story today. And it got me so upset. I thought that's not right.
I think a distinction that came to me from my own life that I was hearing, the narrative story, I think of like religion and church, right?
yes.
In church, I think a lot of people are telling stories.
Yes.
Right, and it's not something that's personal to them. You can tell.
Right.
Not saying that's everybody's experience, but
Right.
that's definitely experience I've seen. Versus like a narrative would be something like maybe someone's testimony.
Yes.
Like someone stands in
Yes.
the church and says, like something like that, right? And they speak something that's true and authentic. And that could be even more impressive on the mind of somebody in the congregation versus the preacher going up and telling something that they don't feel it. Am
Right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And not only authenticity being a big factor,
Yeah.
but exclusivity. Meaning that, for example, a pastor or a minister or a priest could get up and give an authentic sermon.
Yeah.
But it may be something that they have done before
Right.
in much the same way, maybe last year at the same holiday, or maybe last week.
Yeah.
But so what I'm looking for when somebody shares narrative is not only is it authentic, but you said it in a way today that you would not have said it yesterday in the same way, and you won't say it tomorrow in the same way, because these people were present, and somebody made that comment, and somebody asked that question,
Right.
and something happened to you that morning before you got there, and it affects you, and it makes that moment be authentic, but also exclusive to everything else.
Wow.
So that's what I look for in narrative.
Wow.
Not only is it you, but it's also something that could only have happened at this time and place.
Yeah.
And aren't we lucky to have been here,
Right.
to have experienced that?
Right.
And to know that you're not going to say the same thing tomorrow at the same time.
Right. Right.
Billions of dollars are being spent in the industry to be able to capture the attention and the interest and the involvement of whoever's reading that script.
Right.
And if they make the movie, then there's going to be more billions, I'm saying collectively, being spent to ensure that the audience is interested and involved,
Right.
and they can identify with the characters on the screen
Yeah.
or on the television without them changing the channel. So
Yeah.
it became very important, and I noticed that in the first 5 pages, this attention had to be captured in a way that felt authentic, felt exclusive, and made you as a reader or as an audience member want to continue to turn the pages or to see where this story ended up.
Yeah.
And so that kind of got me thinking, this is applicable not only to scripts and movies, I think it's applicable to life in many ways.
Oh, many. Yeah.
And that's what
many
helped me
ways.
later in the sales world,
Right.
when I would train people on how to do this authentically and exclusively.
Yeah.
So,
Well-
it was like graduate school working for him.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. And it was a time when he wanted to do outside projects. He always had written and directed his own projects.
Yeah.
He was a very autobiographical filmmaker, which is great.
Yeah.
And then Tom Cruise came up and said, I want you to make Vanilla Sky, which is a remake of a Spanish film called Abre tus ojos, Open Your Eyes, by Pedro Almodóvar.
Yeah.
And it's a great original film. But Tom Cruise really wanted to remake it, so Cameron said, well, I don't normally do this kind of thing. It's not really my story, but he did it.
Yeah.
And he made Vanilla Sky, which came out a year after Almost Famous. And I like it. I mean, that's a movie that people can say, they don't like. There's a lot of people who don't like that movie.
Yeah.
Some people hate that movie.
Yeah.
It's a science fiction, weird, trippy movie.
Yeah.
I happen to have liked it, but it didn't quite do what they all wanted it to do.
Right.
And so after that, Cameron said, you know what, I think I'm going to go back to kind of doing my own thing and not looking for outside scripts. So my job kind of became obsolete because he wasn't accepting any more submissions.
Wow.
As much as I wanted him to. And then I went off and I went, fortunately, I got to work for Matthew Fox. So I got to see the television side. I was with film for a couple of years, and I got to see television.
How did you transition from Cameron Crowe to Matthew Fox?
Well, I was unemployed, and again, it's very much like who you know and the networking. And I had a friend who said, listen, I know Matthew Fox, and he's looking for an assistant because he's about to star in a television series that he's going to be like in all the scenes, and he's going to be working really long hours.
Yeah.
And so meet with him. And so I met with him, and I said, I was an assistant for a while, but I moved up to Story Analyst, and that's where my passions right now are really, lying.
Yeah.
And he said, well, great, because you can read all the scripts that I get, and you can do that for me.
Yeah.
So I got to do it, and I got to be on set every day. And
Nice.
I didn't have to go run and pick up all the mail and the dry cleaning. I got to
Go
actually
get the coffee.
be there. No, it was wonderful. I got to
Yeah.
see what it was like to be on a set, and I got to see the scripts, and I didn't have the power to say this is not good. We should not do this script this week. But I was able to help.
Give recommendations.
And the best part of that job is that was where I met my beautiful wife, Carrie Specht, who happened to be day playing as a second assistant director.
Nice.
And I saw her and said, well, I need to know who that person is.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Cool.
I've been wondering, you said something about how story could be, or narrative can be applied to life itself. And I think it's interesting, Ron Ricky's book Story has like an intro chapter talking about that very thing.
I love that book.
Right.
That's another book that some people can hate.
Yeah.
But a lot of people love. But as far as I'm concerned, great book.
So far, what I've been reading has been amazing.
Love that book.
But he talks about, like, with modern history, let's say around the 1500s, humans are continuing to look towards different things for guidance and what to do in life. So religion was huge, right? Then science became that big thing, and there's philosophy. But now we're in this time mode where story is really the big thing that people are grasping to say, this is what I need to do in life. This is how I can find my morals. This is how I can find my ground. Right. Do you see that as you agree with him on that?
I do. Well, we are storytelling animals.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is ingrained in us, and it's not something that is biological,
right,
more than it is just passed down mimetically through eons. I mean, there was a time when people would gather at the fire at night, and it was really important for this person to tell you not to go over there because there's a mountain lion, and not to eat these berries because you'll get really sick, and that there's some people over the other side of the mountain who might come to get us. So we became, out of necessity and survival, storytelling animals. And then we started recording these stories on the cave walls. And even in biblical times, these were stories first before they were ever written down. So the storytelling tradition carried throughout history. And there were certain stories that were remembered and passed on more than other stories.
Wow.
Why was that? Because they were relevant. They affected your health. They affected your financial stability. They affected your very survival. They affected your emotions, and they caused you to feel things. And so, yes, telling stories became vital. And then somewhere along the line, it became a wonderful form of entertainment. And it became not only a craft where there are certain things you can do that actually make it better, but it became, in my opinion, and I think you'll agree, an art. Where not only can it be something that is wonderfully executed in a craftful way, but it elevates humanity, and it says things that we could not have said otherwise, and it speaks to the heavens, and it speaks to our condition on earth, and it became absolutely ingrained in us. And now we live in a society where we're pretty savvy about storytelling.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
my 16-year-old son now can tell a good story from a bad story, and he's making stories on his phone with iMovie, and we're becoming very sophisticated when it comes to storytelling. And we're becoming very discerning as audience members as to this is no good, this is good, this is no good. Even in the last 10 years, there are people now on social media recommending binge-watching television series, and guess what? They're right. They're recommending good things. It's very rare when I see bad television getting popular like I used to when I was a kid. Tons of bad TV. But now the stuff that people are recommending generally is pretty good. There's a much higher quality, and I think it's because we have evolved to be pretty discerning when it comes to story.
But also now that we don't have the survival needs or necessities for story as much, but I see it from a physical standpoint, but maybe from an emotional standpoint, these stories are really like affecting people, swaths of people, that they'll cry when Iron Man dies on screen.
Sure.
Right? If we
Spoiler alert.
Well, it's 6 months, sir. It's been some time. Been some time. But, you know, like, when people see these characters on screen over multiple movies, these franchises, it's a big deal for them. Why is that?
From a mythological sense, I mean, there is timeless stories that are retold and adapted in new ways, and they will always find a place, and they will always find audiences.
Right.
And in addition to that, there are some stories that now are being told that never would have had a chance to be told.
Right.
And they're reaching people who never maybe had an identification before.
Right.
So new characters and new stories we now live in a world where I don't care how small your story is, there's an audience for it.
Yeah.
And if it's told with authenticity and it's told in a way that only you can tell it,
Right.
then it's just a matter of getting it in front of the eyeballs of people who will say, this is quality work, this is authentic, this is exclusive, only this person can do it. And I think that's very encouraging.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, some people might argue there is so many stories out there
There's a
that
lot
you're
of
going to get
content now.
lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
But I kind of tend to disagree. I think that the cream kind of rises to the top.
Yeah.
And while you may have a particular story that might not ever be seen or well received, if you're a good storyteller, if you are good at putting your narrative into that, then you'll do it on the next project.
Right.
You know, you'll have a career, you'll have a longevity as long as you are able to adhere to not only the craft of filmmaking or storytelling, but the art of it as well.
Yeah. It seems like right now where we're at with the streaming platforms, that TV or like episodic content is what's really going to be big and it's going to continue on, you know, for the next decade to be a strong influence in where people's eyeballs are.
Yes.
Why would you think that would be versus the feature film that we've been relying on for so many years?
I hesitate to even mention his name, but Kevin Spacey, you can find this video on YouTube, did a wonderful speech. You ever see the speech that he gave once
No.
to I think it was a HBO convention or something. It was some kind of a gathering of professionals.
Yeah.
And he gave a really, at the time, it was heralded as a wonderful talk on the future of entertainment.
Right.
And he basically said that, you know, the future of entertainment is in erasing the confinement of a set period of time. Stories now can breathe over 6 hours, 10 hours, 20 hours. It's up to the filmmakers and it's up to the arc of the story that you can tell a story as completely or as long as you wish it to tell. And people are now no longer bound by that 50-foot movie screen or their 56-inch or whatever inch television set. They can now consume story at the gym while they're, you know, on the you can tell I exercise. On the
Bicycle?
spin cycle.
We don't exercise.
Or when they're walking their dogs or, you know, while they're making dinner, they can now consume story in bite-sized bits. And I find myself sometimes overwhelmed with the choices that I have.
Right.
I mean, I drive to San Diego all the time to see my son. And I have the choice of being in the car and listening to, you know, podcasts, or watching videos, watching television episodes. Now, you shouldn't do this while you're driving.
No, you shouldn't.
I understand.
No, you shouldn't. Disclaimer.
Or
don't
like
do that.
audiobooks.
But yes,
too,
audiobooks. I mean, the story can now come in so many different forms.
Right.
I mean, you know, the Making of a Murder serial podcast. I mean, that was a story, which included wonderful narrative from the person who was doing the podcast.
Right.
Sarah was her name, right? She could have given that particular story that narrative because it was so personal to her and how she viscerally reacted to it.
Right.
And somebody else doing that same podcast, hopefully it'd be a whole different experience.
Yeah.
I find that television is, in some cases, more exciting to me than movies. When I look at the number of TV shows that are coming out or new seasons of shows that I love, I get more excited about that than movies that might be coming out this season. And I'm not the only one, but there's like maybe 3 movies I'm looking forward to this season, but there might be 8 different TV shows. I
Yeah.
can't wait for them to come back.
And the quality is just as good as film, so it's like you're getting the goodness of film, but like for 6 hours or whatever
and
long
people,
the show is.
and you get big, great name people migrating now to television.
Right.
So you're getting top of the line talent now.
Yeah.
It's now it's muddy now. There's no more distinction of I'm a TV actor, I'm a film actor. Now it's, hey, you got a good story to tell. Even unknown people, every time I see somebody on a TV show that I think is great, and I haven't heard of them, I think either I'm getting old or this person is from England or Australia and I've never heard of this person before.
Right.
More often than not, they're from another country, and I look them up on IMDb and it's like, oh, they're from Australia, they're from New Zealand, they're from England. And yes, we can now have this incredible global talent pool telling great stories, and it's wonderful.
Definitely.
So for somebody struggling with trying to tell a story, are there techniques they can use, or how would you go about helping that person?
Well, first of all, I would say, yes, get some of those texts, like Story by Robert McKee, and Michael Haig did a wonderful book called Writing Screenplays That Sell that I love. William Frug has a couple of very slim volumes, F-R-O-U-G.
Okay.
The screenwriter talks to the screenwriter, I think is one of them.
Yeah.
Wonderful books that are from masters. Sidney Lumet has a book called Making Movies, which is a wonderful primer from a wonderful director. Carrie and I are reading right now Conversations with Wilder. I'm rereading it, which is Cameron Crowe interviewing Billy Wilder about filmmaking. So there's wonderful resources out there to learn from masters. Yeah. But also, and I'm sure my wife would agree, see movies, see old films, see the best of the best, see the people, the work from the people who've done it and who've done it tremendously well. Right. Watch great television. So yes, there are techniques just simply by watching it, but there are also things that you already know how to do. And I tell this to students, when I talk to them or when I'm training people in the corporate world. There are things you already know that make a good story. You had something big happen to you at work, or something horrible happened on the way to work, or when you come home and your wife or your husband or your spouse or your partner or your friend says, so how was the day? Yeah. And you say, oh, you won't believe what happened to me today. You already know the best way to tell that story for that particular audience. Yeah. You already have those skills. But when I was working as a story analyst, as I mentioned, I saw certain patterns that were coming across. And 3 of those patterns Michael Haig had identified in a screenwriting lecture, a workshop that I went to. And I saw, yes, these are the things Michael Haig talked about. And as I continued in my career, I found 3 more that nobody ever talked about. And I created what I call the 6 legs of rapport. Wow. And these are the 6 techniques that I have identified that are used universally in any story, any book, any movie, any television show, any form where there is a story or a narrative, in order to capture the attention, the identification, and the involvement of an audience. Yeah. And I always saw them in the first 5 pages, and I thought, I need to remember this. I need to not only know this, I need to get good at this so that I can share it with other people. Right. And this became one of the big parts of my narrative strategies. Yeah. So the 6 legs of rapport are jeopardy, empathy, likability, authority, affinity, and exclusivity. And if you like, I can break them down very quickly for you.
Yes, please.
All right, so remember,
free lesson, y'all.
In any story that you're telling, and by the way, I suppose it's possible that there's another one I haven't identified, but I haven't found it yet, and I've been doing this for 20 years. Yeah. And it's possible that somebody might purposefully play with some of those ingredients to get a different reaction from you. Yeah. But generally, if you want to capture somebody's attention, get them to be involved, meaning they want to see where it goes, they want to keep turning the pages, or they want to keep watching. And identification, meaning they feel a bond with the protagonist that makes them care. Yeah. Because you have to have your audience care. Right. Then these are the 6 ways to do it. Number 1 is jeopardy. It's an option. You don't have to use all of them. You can just use one of them. You can use a couple of them. But jeopardy is one of the options. Basically, in the first 5 minutes, your protagonist is in danger of dying. Yeah. And you see this in a lot of action movies. It'll start off and the scene starts and somebody's being chased, or they're in a fight for their life, or a plane is about to crash land, and you think, oh my gosh, this is a human being. Yeah. And unless it's if it's somebody that you know, like Tom Cruise or Tom Hanks, you can already identify with them. But if it's an actor, like, again, somebody from New Zealand or Australia, we've never seen them before, then you might not have an identification with them. Putting them in mortal danger in the first 5 minutes will automatically get an audience to go, I want to see what happened to this person. They almost died.
Right.
So, and James Bond movies, by the way. The first scene of every James Bond movie is him escaping death. So even if it's a brand new actor, you know viscerally, that's the guy I need to look out for. Right. That's the guy that I care about. And he almost died. And wow, what a hero. And you're off and running.
Right.
So Jeopardy is one. 2, empathy. This is akin to Jeopardy. Your life isn't in danger, but something's happened that makes people empathize with you.
Right.
You got a divorce.
Yeah.
Or your dog died that morning.
Yeah.
Or you get fired. Jerry Maguire starts off with him getting fired. I mean, he puts his heart into something, so he's likable, and then he gets fired, and you empathize with him. This guy's career is done because of something that he did authentically.
Yeah.
So empathy is very easy to do. We see that a lot. And sometimes it's done very, very badly. But done well, you can create a situation where you care about this character because they're going through something that, oh, man, I would hate to have to go through that. Or you've been through that, so you can identify because I've been there.
Right.
So empathy is another one. Third one is my favorite one because it just is natural for me. That's likability. And likability is basically you care about that person because they're likable. And now Hollywood sometimes will get lazy on this one.
Yeah.
Because instead of actually doing the work and writing a likable character in the script, they'll just hire Sandra Bullock. Or they'll hire Tom Hanks or George Clooney or somebody that we already like.
Yeah.
And then you say, well, I love this person. And so it may not be in the script, you just happen to like them.
Right.
But what if you can't afford Tom Hanks or Tom Cruise?
Right.
What if you are actually bound by the story itself? Well, you make the person likable. How? You make that person a good person. You make them, they lend their brother money that they don't have, but it's their brother.
Right.
They help an old lady who fell in the grocery store and they pick up the things and they get her new eggs because her eggs broke.
Yeah.
Or they find a lost dog and they're going to be late for their job interview, but they're going to make sure the dog is safe. Doing things that just are likable by nature are going to make you say, I like this guy. I like this woman. I'm going to watch her for the rest of the movie.
Right.
And humor, by the way, is also a great way to be likable. If you make an audience laugh, then we like you. So that's the third one. Fourth one is authority. And this one you see a lot as well. Basically, in the first 5 pages, you make the protagonist the best at what they do. They're the best surgeon in the hospital. And they're in the middle of a brain surgery that's very, very sensitive and anything could go wrong, but they pull it off. Nobody else could have done that. High fives all around. The movie begins and we know they're the best. Or they're the best race car driver on the track and they won that race.
Right.
Or they're the best cop on the force and they just call it a criminal that's been, So you start off by making them the best at what they do.
Right.
And then generally it's a redemption story where you're going to see them fall from grace and then you're going to try to see them get their mojo back.
Like a Doctor Strange.
Exactly. Yeah. So making them very good at what they do is also a way. And interestingly enough, just to go on a little tangent here. When I've taught this to corporate people, and because these strategies can translate into the real world.
Yeah, definitely.
I have a love-hate relationship now with authority because that's the one that people want to gravitate toward.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because of insecurities but people, when they're giving a speech or they're telling a story, they'll try to come off as, I'm the best at what I do, and they'll use big words and they'll put on an inauthentic kind of veneer of, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to be da-da-da. And it's so inauthentic, but they love the idea that they think that they're projecting this authority that I tell people, use it sparingly.
Yeah.
Remember, you're already the authority because you're at the front of the room.
Right.
You're already the authority because you have the name badge on. You know where the bathrooms are. You're already the authority because your name is on the poster of the movie.
Yeah.
We know you're the guy. You don't have to go and, be authoritative with a big hammer because it can be overwhelming. So authority is great, but use it sparingly. I love, my favorite technique for authority is don't make it be so blatant. Borrow authority from another area and put it in. So if you are giving a speech about how to do a specific process and nobody knows that you're a gardener, that you love gardening and you have a green thumb and you Talk about your authority about some strain of flower that you just discovered.
Oh, wow.
Borrow the authority from something else. So, for example, you made a comment earlier about Star Wars. I'm guessing you're a Star Wars fan, right?
Yes.
Not a Star Trek guy. You're a Star Wars guy.
Yes, sir.
So you knew that it was Admiral Akbar
Right.
and not General Akbar.
Right.
So if you were doing a movie or a film, I would say, let's bring that in. Bring
Yeah.
that thing in, because then you're using authority from another area.
Right.
And then we instinctively know, okay, he may not be the authority on this, but I'm going to view him as an authority because he knows about Star Wars or chess, or he knows about, the best route to get to this particular place. So
Yeah.
that's my favorite use of authority. It's subtle, but I find the best use is when you borrow it from somewhere else
Right.
and don't throw it in someone's face.
Yeah.
Right.
Then there's affinity. Affinity is great
Yeah.
because it's basically the commonalities that we have with our audience.
Yeah.
In filmmaking, affinity was really kind of had its heyday, I think, in the 1970s blaxploitation movement,
Okay.
when there was a whole segment of people who were not being represented in film.
Okay.
And they wanted films made by people who understood what they were going through. And filmmakers and stars started to make films for this segment.
Yeah.
And that created an affinity that continues now to this day.
Right.
There are people now who will follow Guillermo del Toro to the ends of the earth
Yeah.
because they feel
Yeah.
he's one of us.
Right,
Or
right.
James Cameron.
Right.
Or Steve Jobs, Bill Gates for that matter.
Yeah.
They have an affinity with the people that they serve because people feel they're one of us.
Right.
They're representing us. They're nerdy, they're geeky, they're just like us, and we like what they're offering.
Yeah.
So you can do this in a film or a story by making a protagonist be a dad if you have parents
Right.
that you're trying to appeal to,
Right.
or they love football as
Right.
many people do,
Right.
or they're if you're making a movie for truck drivers, make your protagonist a truck driver.
Yeah.
Find a way to have an every person quality,
Yeah.
something that we can all relate to. And if you create that affinity, that'll create that identification.
Wow.
And the final one is exclusivity.
Yeah.
And exclusivity is doing something that only that person can do. We were talking earlier about Sidney
Yeah.
Poitier.
Yeah.
That's about as exclusive as you can get.
Yeah.
Because nobody can do what Sidney Poitier did.
Yeah.
Nobody can do it like him. So to me, that's the mark of a great performance.
Right.
No one can do that like them. Great filmmaker. Nobody can make a movie like Martin Scorsese. Nobody can make a movie like Steven Spielberg. Nobody can make a movie quite like this particular person.
Yeah.
So that's exclusivity. You'll never see the Titanic sink in much the same way as if you went and saw that movie Titanic.
Right.
That gave you an experience you could only have gotten from watching that movie.
Right.
He's now done it with a whole universe with Avatar,
Yeah.
a whole species and whole planets and histories and mythologies. So much so he's devoted the rest of his life to telling this story,
Yes,
this
he has.
narrative from his imagination
Yes, he has.
in a way that you're never going to get that experience unless you go see a James Cameron movie.
Right.
So exclusivity in terms of characters are you make somebody, and it could be a combination of who you cast, but it can also be the character themselves. They are uniquely that character.
Yeah.
Only that character would say that and do that in such a way, and I've never seen somebody like this before.
Like
So
a
that-
Han Solo,
a
Harrison
Han
Ford.
Solo. Who
Yeah.
saw Han Solo before Han Solo?
Right.
That was like refreshing, and he's funny and irreverent, and that's exclusive.
Yeah.
There is only one Han Solo
Right.
in all the universes.
Yeah.
So that's a great character,
Yeah.
great example.
So the review, there's 6 legs
6 legs of rapport. I call them rapport.
rapport.
To create interest, identification, and involvement.
Right.
And once again, they are jeopardy,
Jeopardy.
empathy, likability,
Okay.
authority, affinity, and exclusivity. And I haven't found a 7th one. In fact, if I find that I'm having trouble identifying which one they're using, it's generally a bad story.
Yeah.
They haven't grabbed me, they haven't hooked me, and I haven't found another one. Maybe one day I will, and I'll
Yeah.
say, hey, here's one that's never been used before.
Well, you have to come back on the podcast.
I would love
and
to.
update-
It
and
would be a
update
big
us.
announcement if I find a 7th leg.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's
Like a phantom limb.
yeah.
Limb. Yes.
Well, moving on with your career, there is a special talent, right?
Yeah, you have a special talent that you.
My wife told you that?
Mercy.
Oh, I'm sorry. No. Yes. No, I'm a wonderful cook. I thought she was talking to you about cooking.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
actually,
cooking,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
No, you have a gift of
Magicianry?
Magicianry. God, I'm going to put that on my business card. I like that.
Yeah.
Magicianry. Yes. I'm a magician. I've been a magician since I was a kid.
Yeah.
As most magicians will tell you, they started when they were a kid.
Yeah.
Most kids, at least boys.
Yeah.
Did you ever have a magic set growing up?
Oh, yeah. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure I did, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of girls do too, but I find that boys generally, at some point in their life, they always get a magic set. But
We
then-
know why, because men are deceitful naturally.
Is that
Right.
it? Maybe. But something happens when puberty hits because
Yeah.
they either they discover love,
Yeah.
or they discover music, or they discover sports, or they discover something else that takes their attention away.
For me, it was Pokemon. But
Oh, was it? There you go. See, I was unlucky in love, and I was no good at sports, and I just stuck with the magic because it was all I had. But yeah, I love magic, and I've been doing it since I was a kid, and I took it seriously enough that my parents actually bought me a magic store when I was a teenager, and I got to run that for a couple of years. So
A
that
whole
was like
store?
a whole store.
I thought you were going to say set. It was like, oh,
No,
okay.
no, an opportunity came to buy a magic store in San Diego, the only professional magic shop at the time, and I got to literally be the kid in the candy store looking through everything.
Wow.
And I continued with it, and I performed. I still perform when
Yeah.
they call me, and I'm a member of the Magic Castle in Hollywood, and that's a very exclusive. That's kind of like Carnegie Hall for magicians. It's
Wow.
the premier
Yeah.
venue for magic
Yeah.
in the world. And you can't get in unless you know a member. But now you know me. So if you ever
Yeah.
want to go,
Yeah.
I'm your contact.
That'd
That'd be
cool.
awesome.
So yeah, I love magic. I've
Yeah.
loved it. It's a big part of who I am.
Now, I just want to make sure we have a distinction here. So when you say magic, are we talking about David Blaine, or are we talking about all of it? Or?
We're talking about magic. I like
Yeah.
close-up magic. That's my
Okay.
love.
Okay.
I don't do the big boxes and the tigers and the
Yeah.
Yeah.
glitter on a stage.
Because when you were saying earlier about you were chained up, maybe this was the start
It was
of
an
a
escape. Yes, it was an
Magic,
escape. I am working on this knot you have me in.
Yeah.
So yeah, close-up magic.
Yeah.
I also am a big fan of mentalism.
Okay.
Much to my wife's chagrin, she's not a big fan of mentalism.
What is that again?
Well, yeah, what's
Mentalism is,
mentalism?
is mind reading magic.
Oh,
So
okay.
instead of like here's a coin and it vanishes, or here's
Yeah.
a card and this is your card,
Yeah.
it's think of something, and I'm going to try to get this. It's almost propless. It's just you. It's psychological magic,
Right.
basically.
Can you do one like over a podcast?
Like, what am I thinking right now?
Well, it's actually funny. I was having a conversation with somebody.
Yeah.
Do you think it's possible for somebody to know what you're thinking when they're not even in the room?
I hope not.
Like, I might be able to get body language from you.
Right.
I might be able to get, maybe I had a conversation about you, or I looked you up on the internet and I found your Facebook preferences. And it's possible in today's world that
Yeah.
you might be skeptical.
Oh, yeah.
But what if there was somebody outside of here who actually could tell you what you were thinking? That would make you kind of wonder about the laws of the universe, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah.
You want to try something?
Yeah.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Let's try something.
Yeah.
I'm gonna. I think I can do this. For example, before I even do this,
Right.
if you were going to name, what could be something you could think of? A card. There are 52 cards in a deck.
Yeah.
Name any card and try to make it one that's not really common. I mean, Ace of Spades you could say, but a
Yeah.
lot of people would say that. It's a
Yeah.
very common card. You may not find it as
An
impressive.
8 of diamonds.
Now, nobody would say 8 of diamonds,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's a pretty unique one. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn on my phone, and
Okay.
if we're going to do this, and I can put it on speaker. Let's do this live.
Okay.
Put any 3-digit area code, and then go ahead and put in another 3 digits. I want to make sure it's a random number, any 3 digits, and then put 2 more digits. And then you put 2 more digits. So we
Make
have a
sure
complete phone number.
He's not reading off of our glasses.
No, I'm not reading. It doesn't matter. 'Cause we're gonna call it,
Yeah.
Oh
and
no.
we're gonna do this live. And I guess we have to tell them we're on a podcast, right? Okay.
Oh, mercy.
So
Here
let's
we
try it.
go.
Let's try it.
Your call cannot be completed as dialed.
I'm sorry. Let's do it again. Area code. I don't know if you.
Oh, a real area code.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And go ahead and put another couple digits, and then put another 4 digits.
Yeah.
So we have a random number.
Okay.
This will be worth it. I promise. As soon
Yeah,
as,
this is cool.
Yeah, let's see what happens. Call speaker.
Who called me at this time of day?
See what happens.
Hey, all, you've reached Laura Joe. I'm not in right now.
Sorry.
That's a real person.
One more time.
Yeah.
Wow, this is great magic.
I know. I'm sorry. Well, I blame them. They're picking bum numbers. Put another number. Something random. Okay.
Okay.
Finish it up. Go ahead and hit dial.
Oh, yeah.
And hit speaker. Hello? I'm sorry. Can I talk to you for...
This is Chris. Is this my driver?
No, it's not your driver. I'm sorry. I'm doing a podcast right now, and I'm doing a magic trick, and I'm hoping you can help me out. We're live right now. Is that okay?
I'm waiting for a car.
Just take a second.
Sorry, who is this?
My name is Ruben Padilla, and I'm on a podcast live with a couple of people.
Yes, you're on the Musty Creative Podcast.
The Musty.
Is this live?
This is live. We're live right now. Musty Creative Podcast. Hoping you can help me with a magic trick. I'm a magician, and I was hoping you could help me by thinking of a card. Would you mind helping me for a second?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So just think of a card in a deck of cards, any card, but no Joker. There was no.
Yeah,
I can say that.
Yeah, no Joker.
And just get one in your mind.
Name the card that they're... Just any card.
Any card from a deck of cards. Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
Got it.
Oh, okay. Well, I want you to say it for our audience, because
Just say it.
just say it out loud. Yes.
8 of diamonds.
Whoa!
That was amazing.
Whoa, that's weird.
You did it. That was fantastic. That was the card he was thinking of.
Yeah.
No idea what just happened.
Yeah, I'm the co-host of the Musty Creative Podcast, Jesús, and I literally just said 8 of diamonds like 5 minutes ago.
Thank you. That was great.
Thank you. I have no idea what I did. but Thank you.
You were
You're
amazing.
awesome.
Thank you
you
very much.
Bye.
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 See?
That's creepy.
Isn't that weird?
That is so creepy.
So is it possible? That gets me thinking. Is it possible for somebody to know that?
At least on the third try.
Yeah.
On the third try, yes.
As a programmer, computer scientist, there's got to be some logical rules, some coincidences, some probabilities.
Right. It's 1 out of 52.
But
literally it's 1 out of
but
52.
A random person.
Random person. You guys dialed the number.
Yeah.
And so that gets me thinking, is it possible for somebody to do that? Now, hopefully, if I did that well, your brain is now kind of exploded a little bit
Yeah.
with the idea that, the rules that you knew before we started this
Right.
podcast no longer apply completely.
Musty Collective are you still with us?
Yes. We didn't even get his name. Did we tell him it was a podcast?
Oh, yeah.
It was Eric, didn't he? This is Eric.
I did not. I did not hear
Well,
him.
I did say podcast, though, so we're not
Yeah.
going to get in trouble. We
No,
didn't identify him.
Yeah.
Right? All
No,
right.
no. Yeah.
So anyway, so I love magic and I love mentalism, but my wife always has this she has a problem with the fact that a lot of mentalists will say concentrate. And she's like, they already know what it is. Come on, you're just acting now. Is it a red card? It's a diamond I'm sensing. And at this point she's like, I completely know that you already know it. Why are we doing this song and dance?
A little dramatic flair, though.
Right.
Entertainment.
So I have this goal to try to get to a point where I can do something and she'll say that was amazing.
Right.
That it'll never happen.
Not this?
Not the mentalism. His close-up magic is amazing.
She loves
Yeah.
my close-up magic.
Yeah.
How much of a
The mental. Well, see that
Right.
only encourages me to try harder.
Well, you can fool everybody right now listening to the podcast. Wow, that was woo. That was
thank you.
That was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Well, it's fun if you don't. That's why magic to me is interesting because we were. I like to apply the narrative strategies to life and everything that I do.
Yeah.
Magic as well. Is it possible for magic to use those 6 legs? Is it possible to use storytelling techniques in whatever endeavor that you do?
Right.
It doesn't have to be just telling a story, doing film.
Right.
But as a mother raising a child, as somebody who is working a job at the mall,
Right.
is it possible to use these techniques? And I say yes, because deep down we all know that we are the protagonists in our lives.
Yeah.
We either consciously know it or subconsciously we feel it.
Yeah.
We're going through this life, we're going through our day-to-day struggles, and we're trying to achieve daily goals,
Right.
and we're trying to achieve change, we're trying to better ourselves, and along the way we have conflicts that get in the way of that. We have other people who might
Adversaries.
take us off our path. We have conflicts with situations, with people, with it's almost like we're telling a story every single day of our lives.
Oh, yeah.
And at the end of the day, when we put our head on the pillow, we either achieved our goals or the story's going to continue the next day and we're going to hope to get our goals.
Yeah.
And I found that you can kind of collapse that little story arc. Remember in old high school English classes where they would teach you that graph where there's like a rising action and there's conflict and at the top is the climax of the story. Remember that? Everybody giggled when you heard that. And then there's the falling action and the conclusion. Well, I basically kind of took that arc and I created the narrative path, which is just basically an evolution of that storytelling. There's the beginning, there's the end, here's all the stuff that can happen along the way, and it's rising upward to show you that it's kind of difficult. And if you get it, you get your goal, then wonderful. And if you don't get your goal, well, sorry, then your story's a tragedy in this particular instance. But that narrative arc, that path, as I call it, can apply to 1 hour. It can apply to a day. It can apply to your week, your month, your year.
Your life.
Birth and death. And, how do we do? So I think, again, going back to the beginning of we're storytelling animals, this is something that is ingrained in us, I think, on a daily basis.
And then, you mentioned a little bit briefly that magic is linked to storytelling. If we go back to some like older stories, there's the witch, putting a curse or some kind of enchanted forest. And are you talking about magic in those ways as a storytelling element or just...
Well, I could talk for hours about this, but essentially magic is generally a story. It's a story of doing something impossible.
Okay.
Whether it's for entertainment or whether it's for actual nefarious, reasons. Not that, I do that. I do entertainment only. But magic is basically you are in a certain sense, you are a god who is breaking the laws of physics, and you're doing something that we all know cannot be done. When magic is done well, you're basically doing something impossible. Very often, magic, when it's performed, tells a story that I find to be very boring, which is the story of the objects. Here's your card, sign your card, we're going to put it back in the deck, I'm going to shuffle it, I don't know where your card is, and is this your card? And too often, bad magic is about the story of the props. He put it in this hand, then it was gone, then it came out over here. And I've always thought, and I'm not alone in this, I mean, I've learned from other magicians that magic can be so much more than that. Magic as metaphor can be the story of doing something impossible, about escaping from a bad situation, about achieving a goal. It really is very akin to movie making in the sense that we're in the realm of dreams. When you make a movie, you're able to do anything you want in a movie. Magic has that same possibility to be able to do anything you want, but in a live setting. And magic is one of the only art forms, I think, that specifically addresses the emotion of wonder. I mean, movies can do it, and other, novels and even songs can do that, create that sense of wonder in you. But magic is dedicated to creating that feeling that we've all, I think, sometimes outgrow. Because when we're a child, I mean, face it, everything is magical. You don't know anything about the world. A butterfly can be magical. A shooting star can be magical. An image on a TV set can be magical. Right? You don't know. How did the person get in that TV set? I used to think that the newscasters who were looking into the camera could see me. When I was growing up, I thought there was a big wall of monitors. I could only imagine about 50 people in the world. And I imagined that if you weren't watching that channel, the monitor was off. But if you were watching, then the newscaster could see you. And I would wave to them as a child thinking they could see me. So magic has a way of doing that, I think, in a live setting. It can be much bigger than simply the story of the props. It can be a metaphor to the condition of life and something greater. Now, it's very possible also to kind of take it too far and come across as this pretentious, I am going to teach you about life, the universe, and everything. Here, pick a card.
Find me on Sunset and Boulevard.
But it's something to strive for. And I do love the idea that magic is specific to that dreamer in all of us. And again is related to movies in much the same way.
And also, would you say like magic and miracles are in the same vein, or is that that's a separate area?
Well, I'm very skeptical as a magician. I kind of have to be in terms of when I see something that people might purport to be actually real.
Right.
You know, whether it's a UFO or some miracle or, you know, Jesus appeared on a Dorito chip. You know, I'm very skeptical about that kind of stuff naturally. But no, I'm talking about magic as an entertainment form.
Gotcha.
You know, not really casting spells or mixing potions in real life.
Right.
Although there was a time when a magician, even for entertainment purposes, would be burned at the stake.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you know, they you know, people sometimes, belief is a very powerful thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know that anybody today in today's world looks at a magician and thinks, this man is doing supernatural things.
Right.
I don't know if that exists in the modern world. I don't know that I don't know. I mean, the thing I did for you, tell me, do you really think that something you thought traversed through this studio over a phone line to somebody, and I don't know what area code you dialed, but that person who answered actually received a card through the ether? Or do you think that there was something explainable going on? Because you said, I'm trying to figure it out. On some level, you don't really think that he read your mind. Or do you?
Well, go ahead. Yeah.
I don't think
You don't?
so. No.
Neither do I.
Neither does Carrie.
And I don't think he read my mind, but I will say this is that I think there's always a trick to the trick that the magician is doing, and you're the magician in this. So there could have been a way that you, through the words you used,
Maybe I subliminally or psychologically
Suggested something?
or suggested possibly.
yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. Well, see, if that's the case, then I am the authority in this scenario. But hopefully I didn't wield it like an authority.
No.
And if I did it correctly the way I wanted to do it, then I made it not about me,
Right.
but about you and this guy.
Right.
Yeah.
It felt like you were on the journey with us.
I was just simply,
Yeah.
a conduit. I was just simply,
Yeah.
on the journey with you. So that's the kind of magic that I like to do, where we can kind of think, well, wow, let's not focus on how we did it.
Yeah.
Let's focus on, that was pretty cool. And what else does that mean? What else can you do? And what else can we talk about?
Yeah, but dude, entertainment-wise, you
Yeah.
just boosted our rating, so thank you so much.
Well, thank Eric or whoever they
Right.
were.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast and telling us all this awesome information. This is great education. But before you leave, we wanted to ask one more question. We asked this for all our guests who are up here on the show. Is there a story that you are dying to tell?
It's a story that I told in script form that I haven't really done anything with, but it's a story that I came up with because of a conversation with my father years ago. He loves sending me little newspaper articles or clippings, or he'll strike up a conversation based on something he read.
Yeah.
And one day he said to me, do you know that nobody owns the moon? What do you mean? He says, nobody owns the moon. You could go to the moon if you wanted to and build a house up there and live there.
Yeah.
Nobody owns it. No one's going to kick you off.
No
If
property tax.
Michael Jackson was alive at the time. He said, if Michael Jackson wants to go to the moon, he can do it.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's interesting. And so all writers have your little notebook of ideas.
Right.
I grabbed that notebook and I wrote down, nobody owns the moon. So imagine, and this might be actually a better time to tell the story than when I wrote it 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Imagine that we live in a world where we really need some global coming together.
Right.
And imagine that somebody has this great idea to have a world lottery. A lottery that the winner would be able to put whatever they wanted as a billboard, basically, on the moon.
Nice.
That the technology exists in this fantasy world with a big laser to etch an engraving on the moon, essentially a billboard that would be up there for 50 years. If you win it, your message, your symbol, your word, your picture, your name will be on the moon for 50 years.
Oh, I like that.
Now imagine, it's kind of like a Willy Wonka type of story.
Yeah.
And imagine that somebody wins this.
Right.
And overnight, they would become the most famous person in the world.
Right.
Everybody would be scrambling, not only to know, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? But corporations would come and say, we want to buy it. We want to buy it.
Yeah.
We want you to put Nike up there or Mickey Mouse.
Right.
We want you to put Coca-Cola. We'll pay you $1 billion to put Coca-Cola for 50 years.
Yeah.
$1 billion. would you sell that right to somebody to the highest bidder? Or would you take the responsibility to say, this is going to be up there for 50 years. I want to pick something that's going to maybe make a difference, maybe mean something, maybe share my narrative. Here's my chance. What would you do? So this is a story about that choice of what somebody would do and the responsibility that might come with it and the opportunities that might come from that. And I could...
Come up with the answer.
Well, yeah.
Oh.
Well, I couldn't
she
come
knows.
Up, well, here's the thing. I started thinking as a writer, okay, well, it could be, it could be a symbol of peace.
Yeah.
It could be a symbol of a child.
Yeah.
It could be two hands shaking hands. I tend to be a lot more sentimental than my wife. And she thought those ideas were horrible, and they were. And I couldn't crack the ending.
Well,
I said, I'm not going to tell you what the ending was.
Okay, good,
but we were
yeah.
having tacos at a fast food place in Hollywood.
Yeah.
I remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah, me too.
And we were sitting there, and I said, I just can't. If I could come up with the perfect ending of what he chooses to put on the moon for 50 years, I think I'd have a story. And then she said, well, you know what it should be.
Don't say it.
I'm not going to say it. And I said, no, what it should be. And she said, it should be this.
Yeah.
And as soon as she said it, I instantly knew, of course. It was one of those things that you hit your head and you say, it couldn't be anything else.
An 8 of diamonds.
An 8 of diamonds! Yes, an 8 of diamonds.
Yeah.
You cracked it.
This was the story.
You've inspired me to pick up the script again and pass it
Or
around.
when we all watch it on a streaming platform or something.
Yeah, somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, we should.
Yes. We want to thank you again, Ruben Padilla.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
If you want to find out more information,
Yeah, please
I have
plug
a big project that I'm about to release imminently. It's not out yet, but we're talking days away at narrativestrategies.com.
Okay.
What I've basically done is taken all of my trainings, including the 6 Legs of Rapport,
Yes.
and I put them into a program, educational program online for people who wish to share their narrative
That's
in
beautiful.
front of people. Speakers, but it can also apply to people writing stories. And it's basically a system that will take all of these things that are original with me that I've kind of put into a program with 73 teaching videos and 12 PDFs, and it's something that will be available very soon. It's called the San Diego Speaking System. That's where I grew up.
Yeah.
And you can find more about that at narrativestrategies.com. Very soon. Not up yet, but it will be up very, very, very shortly. So please check that out.
Oh, yes, please. All right. narrativestrategies.com. You heard it here first. Any other things you want to plug? Future projects, current projects?
That's pretty much what I'm doing, dedicating myself to teaching people how to say it better,
Yes.
tell your story,
Right.
and share your narrative by owning the room.
Right.
I know it's a cliche statement to own the room, but basically it means that the design of what you want to say, the execution of how you say it, the experience that your audience has, and the results that generates are under your control.
Yes. That's awesome. And it's not cliche because you kind of gave us a great foundational point earlier. So that is awesome. All right. Well, if you out there are Musty Collective, any projects you're working on in 2019, please let us know by posting on social media with the hashtag the Musty Creative, and we will share it on the show. That's all we have time for. Remember to leave us a review on iTunes and find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and anchor.fm/Musty. Now,
Musty. It's time to shower up.
Gives them a satisfaction they couldn't get any other way.